I won't lie, I completely stole this idea from Katie from Books and Things. So full credit to her. I will link the video that I watched down below where she read all of the shortest books on her TBR. I decided to take it one step further, and I am trying to read the 3 shortest books and the 3 longest books on my TBR. So I'm going to tell you what they are. First off is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. This is an anthology of retellings of fairy tales. I think there's 6 or 7 in here. You can see that I'm already reading it. This is also a library book, so this is the first one I am reading. That's why I'm reading it, because I want to get it back to the library today. So I've got 2 stories left. I'll tell you about my feelings when I finish the book. I am currently trying to work my way through some of Angela Carter's works because I got this lovely huge anthology of like 4 million fairy tales and folk tales from other countries, and I've been reading that since October last year. But this is a much smaller one, which is why it's on the shortest list. But I thought I'd give it a go as well because I am really enjoying those fairy tales, but they're really short. They're like a page to 2 pages, whereas this is more sort of typical anthology of like 10 to 15 pages, maybe a bit longer. The first story in this collection is about half the book, and that's The Bloody Chamber, which it's named after. My next shortest book is another anthology, but it's only got 2 stories. It is The Invisible Child and the Fir Tree by Tove Jansson. I don't think that's how you pronounce her first name, but I don't know how. Is it Tove? Tove Jansson? The Moomin Lady, basically. These are 2 Moomin stories. I love the Moomins, but I don't think I've ever read any of the books. I think I've seen the TV shows, but Moomins have always just sort of been around and I've been very fond of them, but I don't think I've actually consumed any Moomin media. So I've got 2 stories here, which I'm excited to read. I got this brand new at an Oxfam bookshop because Oxfam do Moomin things, which I really enjoy. And then my third shortest book is Dragon Slayer, The Story of Beowulf by Rosemary Sutcliffe. I love this old school cover because it's just a green hairy man and I enjoy that a lot. Ooh, was that an illustration? There's illustrations inside. That just looks like a bunch of pots, but okay. It's reasonably large font. Oh, there's another one. It wasn't very expensive. No, it was £4. I enjoy Rosemary Sutcliffe. I have read The Eagle of the Ninth when I was younger, and I'm pretty sure I've read a couple of others, but I can't remember which ones. But I also really enjoyed The Story of Beowulf, and I would like to reread it because I think the last time I read it, I was in school. So I'm interested to give this a go. I feel like I could probably read this in one sitting if I wanted, and I love books like that. So, excited. The first of my longest books, as you will have seen, is The Complete Sherlock Holmes Long Stories. I picked this up on the charity run that George and I did the other day. We were gonna buy A Study in Scarlet, and then we found this like 2 shelves over from the charity shop, and we bought this instead because it was the same price and had 3 more stories in it. So I'm slowly working my way through these, but I'm doing it over audiobook because that's the way that I'm reading a lot at the moment. I also have a surprising number of opinions about some of these books and the way that Arthur Conan Doyle writes, because some of this is quite unexpected and I'm not loving them as much as I thought I was. I will give you full thoughts when I have finished all 4 stories. Currently, I have only finished 2, I think. My next longest book is Middle Game by Seanan Maguire. This has been on my TBR for a really, really long time, ever since I first heard Books and Lala talk about the Wayward Children series. So I've read all of the books that are out currently in the Wayward Children series. I really like them, but this is a different series about Roger and Dodger, who are twins, and I've mostly forgotten the plot, I'll be honest, but it's something to do with achieving godhood and I think experimentation. And I remember when I first read the plot of this, it gave me sort of Maximum Ride vibes, but not for teenagers. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And then the longest book currently on my TBR is The Dragons of Deepwood Fen by Bradley P. Beaulieu. This is a fucking massive book. It is a brand new hardback, so it's going to be a pain in the bum to read. It is 684 pages, which is just a bit much, really. But it's all about dragons, and the Fantasy Hive interviewed him about this book when it first came out, I think beginning of this year. And the way he was talking about his dragons and his world building was really interesting. I tried his series that started with a book that looks like this. I can't remember the title of it, and I didn't love it. but I enjoyed the concept of the world that he was talking about, so I'm hoping that this book will be good. And then I'll knock a giant book off my TBR. So I'm excited. I will check in with you when I have finished one of these. That'll probably be very soon because I do want to get Angela Carter back to the library today, but I'll see you in the next clip. Hello. I finished The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. It's already back in the library. So this is an anthology with 7 or 8 short stories in it. They're all retellings of fairy tales. What I didn't realise is that there were going to be, in some cases, multiple retellings of one fairy tale. So there was 2 of Beauty and the Beast and 3, I think, of Red Riding Hood. The main thing to know about Angela Carter's writing is that she writes with this gothic eroticism that I've never really read anywhere else. Her prose is just, I don't know the word. It's really, it's good. It's rich. It's metaphorical. It puts you right in her brain in exactly the way that she wants to describe. You understand exactly the point she's trying to make in the most sort of scenic, imaginative way. And I thought the prose was really effective. I struggled a bit because it was an anthology, even though it was a short one. There's erotic themes throughout, though it's definitely not a romantic anthology. And the one thing I really struggled with was that in nearly every story there was a young girl character who is often referred to as a child, as virginal. You get the impression, because it's kind of set in the first half of the 20th century, that they're like maybe 17 to 20, so like sometimes 16. One of them was definitely 16. And these are our heroines, and they're being taken over by these men and doing sexual things with these men, and it's romanticizing their childlike bodies and their virginity and the fact that they've never been touched and the fact that they're all innocent, and like it really, really plays on that portrayal and that fantasy that just really gives me the ick. And I know that this is not a modern book and it's a product of its time, but that gave me the ick. If you want beautiful writing and romanticised kind of erotic stories, retellings of fairy tales, absolutely give this a go. Some of the stories in there were really, really good. Sometimes the use of sex in these stories is relevant to the plot and it's just a plot device, like it moves the story along. Sometimes I think it's there for shock value. And there was one story that was only a page and a half long that was just, it was completely unnecessary. So I gave it a 4 because I thought it was really well written. I thought these were interesting takes on very well-known stories, but there was that element throughout that really gave me the ick and I didn't like it, and that was sad. But overall, it was okay. I'm glad this is a library book. I'm not sure if I want my own copy. If I can find a nice one, maybe. I'm just very glad it was a short anthology. I'm struggling with her longer ones because it is just so thick and it's like Bible thin paper as well. Overall, a positive start to the video, because if you've seen any of the other videos that I've put out lately, I'm not having a good reading time. I have DNF'd so many books. So I'm glad I finished this one. I'm plodding along with Sherlock Holmes, but I'm doing those on audiobook. So I don't know what I will pick up next, but I will let you know once I have finished it. Hello. I have, much to my annoyance, DNF'd the complete long stories of Sherlock Holmes. I listened to 2.5 of these stories on audiobook. I thought that would be the best way for me to absorb them. Now these stories are from, does it say what year they were published? So these stories are first from like 1887. That's when A Study in Scarlet first appeared, and that was Sherlock Holmes' first story. That was the first time Arthur Conan Doyle wrote about him. I initially quite liked the stories because you got what you were expecting. Like, I have read and watched so many variations on the Sherlock and Holmes dynamic, on the mysteries that are based on detectives that deduct and like have very Sherlockian qualities and characteristics to them. There was always going to be a chance that reading the original works was just not going to hit as hard because these are the originals. They were written over 100 years ago, and I've read and watched much more modern retellings that are designed to appeal to people from my generation and from my time period. And I accept that. I didn't hugely enjoy these books because, and I don't know if it's the same in all of them or if I just managed to listen to the two that were set out like this, but I listened to A Study in Scarlet and I listened to The Valley of Fear and I listened to half of Hand of the Baskervilles, and I hated the way that the stories were laid out. So we would start with Sherlock on Watson, and we would be presented the mystery and we would talk about the findings and we'd follow them for a good chunk of the story. But when it got to the denouement, where we had either caught the killer or were about to catch the killer, when we got to that like climactic moment, we would stop and we would travel back in time and we would follow the killer or the suspect or like the important person in the story. Then we would listen to their story from start to finish to catch up to where we were. And I hate that. I hate that because you've just introduced me to these characters in this setting and you're going to pluck me right out of the moment and take the wind out of my sails and take me right back to somewhere I don't know. It happened in both of these cases that it was America, just happened to be the setting, with people I don't know in a space I'm not familiar with, and it would often start quite a long way back in their history. It would sort of tell you their life story and how they got to where they were. And I understand how that could be a choice that you make when telling a story, but to me it was very jarring. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think one of the reasons this happened is because I feel like these were originally told in serials. So I'm wondering, please correct me in the comments, but I'm wondering if these chapters were released bit by bit in serials, in newspapers or magazines or whatever they were called, periodicals. So maybe it was just for like that week's chunk or whatever would just be the backup story, and then you'd come back to the rest of the story afterwards. Maybe in that format it made more sense, but reading it just as a whole story from start to finish, that really didn't work for me. And I think it's such a shame. I love the concept of like Holmes and Watson. I love that dynamic, and I'm always a fan of seeing it in books. And I will probably try and read more Sherlock Holmes stories, but I'm wondering if maybe I should just stick with the shorter ones because these are the longer ones. So maybe he just does that with the longer ones. If you know, please let me know. But I really struggled. And like, I was listening to Stephen Fry read them as well. Like, I thought that was a surefire way to get me to enjoy them, and it just didn't work. So I think that's a shame, but it certainly doesn't mean I won't read any Sherlock Holmes ever again. These ones, not for me. I got like 3/4 of the way through, so I think I did pretty well, but just not for me. I was so not in the mood. Yeah, that's my update. There was bound to be at least one DNF for this vlog, and it doesn't hugely surprise me that it was the stories written in 1887. I've read some more books, so let's talk about them. I will start by saying I DNF'd Middle Game, so it's not looking good for the long books on this list. Turns out Middle Game just really wasn't for me, and there's not much more to it than that. I've had this on my TBR for a very long time, and because I love the Wayward Children series, I thought I was going to love Middle Game as well. I knew it was about two different characters, I knew it's a completely different world, I knew it was more sci-fi than fantasy, but I just didn't vibe with the book, so I put it down. I think I only got a couple of chapters in the end, but yeah, not for me. So I don't really have much else to say about Middle Game because I didn't get very far into it. I just didn't love the characters, I wasn't feeling the intrigue, I wasn't feeling connected, and I could not find a reason to keep reading. I think as well the fact that I have DNF 14 books this month has something to do with that. But overall this wasn't for me, and I wasn't going to drag myself through it, so there we go. That's 2 of my longest reads down. I did read the 2 short reads, so let's talk about those. I read Dragon Slayer by Rosemary Sutcliffe. This was exactly what it says on the tin. I didn't think there were any dragons in the story of Beowulf. Turns out I was wrong. I have learned my lesson. This is just a retelling of the story of Beowulf, and for someone who had to read the original poem in class with like the English on one side and the Old English on the other side, this was much easier to read and had some fun illustrations as well, which I enjoyed. It's just a typical like myth, basically, like old legend. So the storytelling, not amazing, but it was an enjoyable read, and I would recommend it if you want like a brief breakdown of the story of Beowulf, because it is only about 112 pages long or something like that. And the illustrations are really fun. So there we go. I did, however, absolutely love The Invisible Child and the Fir Tree by Tove Jansson. This is 2 short stories that have been re-released for Oxfam specifically by Jansson's estate, because she passed away in 2001, unfortunately. But reading Moomin stories is just so calming and cozy, and I just loved them. It was like a breath of fresh air. I would happily read Moomin stories all day, every day, I think, to just like calm me down. And I highly, highly recommend them. If you want something that's easy to read, that's like kind of cottagecore, that's cozy fantasy in like the original sense of the term, I would give the Moomin stories a go. Like, I think more people should be talking about them, because I think we've all seen the TV shows and we've all seen them on like the mugs and the trays and the merch that's around at the moment. But like, the stories are just so good. They're so enjoyable to read. I am also partway through The Dragons of Deepwood Fen by Bradley P. Beaulieu. I am really struggling to pick this up. It keeps hopping points of view, which I'm finding really difficult at the moment, because while the concept of the world I'm finding quite interesting, because we keep hopping around and having to make connections between who this new point of view is compared to all the others, and we don't seem to be looping back around in a circle yet. I'm just finding it really hard to get invested in the story and quite understand what's going on. Like, I'm 100 pages in and I feel like I'm barely on chapter 1 for some of these points of view, and it's not even that long of a book. Like, it's a 400 to 500 page book. This feels like it could be a 1,000-page book with the pace that it is going. It's really slow paced. I am finding the dragons interesting. I am finding some aspects of the world interesting. I am also finding some characters really quite tropey and stereotyped. So I'm hoping that changes. We are heading towards, I think, me DNFing all 3 of the longest books on my TBR at the moment, which isn't amazing, but I have DNF'd 14 books this month, so we'll see. We'll see. I will update you once I've come to a decision on the dragons. Yeah. I have DNF'd The Dragons of Deepwood Fen. I just didn't feel like I could get my claws into it, for want of a better phrase. There were so many points of view. There were so many characters being introduced, and the way that the points of view, we've sort of moved from one person and then we'd follow the point of view of someone who was briefly mentioned in the last chapter, and then the next chapter would follow point of view from someone who was briefly mentioned in the last chapter, or we'd follow someone completely new who would then reference someone who was briefly mentioned in the last chapter. It got really confusing. You did not need to have that many points of view in this book. This could have been a 1 point of view book. It was very confusing, and I'm just really sad, because I thought I was going to really enjoy this book. I liked the way that the dragons were portrayed. I liked the way that the world was kind of built around dragons and the way that they were introduced and talked about, but I really wasn't impressed by the character work. And if you're going to base your novel off so many different points of views from different characters, they need to not be tropey stereotypes that I've seen in a million other books. They need to actually be interesting and have personalities, and this book was just so slowly paced, and there was so much telling and not showing. It was always a case of, let me do this amazing thing and reference this other thing and talk about this incomprehensible word that doesn't mean anything, and then it would give you like the history of that word then and there, and it's just, I didn't love it. And the fact that I didn't love his last series either, I think I can just say that I'm really not a fan of Bradley P. Beaulieu's writing. It's not for me. It's not like there weren't different female characters in it either. There was a decent range. I couldn't tell you. I think there was some diversity. I wasn't particularly like blown away by that at all in the book. Yeah, it was just severely underwhelming, and I have better things to do with my life. So I didn't plan on DNFing all 3 of my long reads and only enjoying my short reads, but there we go. That's how this ended. Thanks very much for watching along. Have you read any of these books? Do you share my opinions? Do you have differing opinions? Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next vlog. Do feel free to hit subscribe or like if you liked this video. It does really help me out a lot, and shows my videos to other people who might like them too. So have a great day, and I'll see you next Sunday.